Alex Murdaugh allegedly stole millions of dollars from not only his clients, but also his law firm. And why is this not admissible automatically in his murder trial?
So, yeah, it may be admissible. And there's been a lot of time, several hours, discussing this. And this was an issue before trial, and it's definitely been an issue for most of the day yesterday and continuing into today. This is a really complicated question for the judge.
Well, and that goes into the issue of character evidence and putting in the bad acts of the defendant and how that's generally inadmissible. Why don't you explain what it is that the judge is ruling on by hearing all of this evidence? Because he's already said that motive, that these financial crimes are admissible to prove motive or to establish motive, but he's still hearing all of this evidence, evidently to determine what evidence is going to be allowed. So what is it that he's trying to do?
So, okay, first off, the reason that people are testifying today without the jury present is the judge is going to have to rule on several pieces of evidence that are particularly important and can be very prejudicial to Murdaugh's case, right? Because he doesn't want the jury to be tainted with something he doesn't think should be admissible.
So why is character evidence so prejudicial? What is it about bringing in alleged bad acts or past crimes that a defendant may have committed? What is it that we're trying to prevent from happening by excluding that type of evidence?
As a general rule, you cannot introduce the accused character to prove conformity therewith. It's just a complicated way of saying you can't bring in the accused's prior bad acts to show that he probably did this, right? But most states, including South Carolina, have carved out some exceptions to that rule. So there's two main exceptions, both of which became an issue in the trial yesterday. The first exception is if the accused and his team brings up anything about the character to try to show he has good character, that opens the door to the state to rebut that with their own evidence of prior bad acts. When one of Paul's friends was on the stand, the defense, as they're wrapping up, asked him a question about, was he a good father, or these, general type questions about his general nature. It was something they said, would he have ever harmed his son in this way? And he said, no. State jumped up and they immediately wanted to rebut that and started introducing questions about, are you aware that he stole from his clients? Are you aware that he stole from his law firm, et cetera, et cetera? And there were objections flying all over the place. But the state was arguing that the defense had opened the door for that testimony. And overnight, or at the end of the day, the judge made a ruling about that and put his ruling on the record on why he allowed that evidence to come in, because the defense had opened the door with their line of questioning with the witness. That's the first exception.
What's the second exception?
All right. The second exception is another one that's at play here. There's an exception for what's known as 404B evidence, which is if you're using it not to show propensity to commit the crime, but you're showing it for another reason. And the other reasons are, I've got it in front of me right here, so I'm going to look at my screen. In South Carolina, the reasons are to prove motive, identity, the existence of a common scheme or plan, the absence of mistake or accident, or intent. So the state is saying that all of this goes to his motive. And in opening argument, they said that his motive was to delay or cover up these financial crimes that his law firm had just been made aware of, literally that day. And the judge is also taking into consideration the state of mind of Alex Murdaugh at the time, that he was confronted about this literally that day. So the state is trying to argue that his motive for committing these crimes is that he wanted to distract from this massive fraud that he had been committing for years. I don't know that motive makes a lot of sense, but I think that's what they're gonna argue to the jury, and at least they're going to use it to get in a lot of these financial crimes, which are numerous.
No, there's so many of them that he's potentially facing life without parole for all of those financial crimes.
Part of what makes this trial so fascinating Two people have been brutally murdered here. I think we always have to keep in mind this and the death of Mallory Beach that's connected to this family. These are just awful things that happened. But in the investigation of Mallory Beach, it turns out Alex Murdaugh was stealing millions of dollars from his clients and his law firm. And then during this investigation, as this is coming to light, suddenly his wife and his son are found brutally murdered on the property. Really amazing the full extent of his crimes. And obviously, it's going to be very prejudicial for the jury to hear the full extent of this. It's amazing that this guy's crimes are so extensive that it's like 2 days of testimony just to do a laundry list of all of the things that he was doing.
Well, the defense said, Judge, if you let all this in, it's going to extend this trial by another 2 to 3 weeks.
It's going to really delay things happening in the trial, but it's extremely important because the defense's whole thing is saying, hey, we know that he was committing financial crimes left and right. He knows he's going to prison for that. But we don't want to turn this trial, which is about whether he specifically pulled the trigger to murder his wife and child. We don't want that to be about, hundreds of financial crimes. And it's going to be confusing for the jury when they're having to weigh the evidence here if a big part of this trial has been about him screwing over his clients and law firm for millions of dollars. It's incredible the amount of theft he was apparently conducting at that law firm.
Yeah, and in July of 2021, so just a little more than a month after the murders, he was evidently $4.2 million in debt, and his bank account was overdrawn $350,000. I mean, it's insane.
No, it's absolutely incredible. And, I think the way this is going to go, though, too, for the defense, if all this is going to come in, they're going to try to spin it as more support for their theory that somebody else came on the property and killed these people, because they're going to show there were a lot of people who had been screwed over for hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars, by Alex Murdaugh, and might have gone to the property that day to do that. And Paul and Maggie happened to be there and not Alec.
And, if it was somebody that was wronged, they could say, you took everything from me, I'm going to take everything from you.
There's so many things that could have happened here.
I mean, it's just, and that's the thing. It feels like the state's theory is just one of those, this is plausible.
Right.
And so we're going to push it. And, but there's also other theories. However, there's a lot of bad evidence for Alex Murdaugh. I mean, the fact that he was there, the fact he lied about it, the fact that he earlier in the day was in different clothes than the clothes that he was wearing at the scene, the fact that he has stolen tons of money from a lot of people, there's a lot.
I think there. I think that the biggest thing, whatever alibi he has left, and that the basic alibi now is that he wasn't there. Personally, I think for the state, I think they're arguing it's to show motive so they can get it all in. But how much in closing argument they're going to be talking about that motive to distract? I mean, you don't have to have a motive to prove a murder, but, I think that they're using it to conveniently get in a lot of this evidence that otherwise might not have been admissible. But if it's in, I think they know it greatly increases their chances of getting a conviction here.
Thanks for watching. We're going to continue to talk about this case and talk about the legal issues that come up and share our thoughts on it. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button so you can get future videos.